welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy, sometimes Mouse, and I talk about books and book-related things, and today I am redoing my horror recs. I had done this original video in 2020 and I tried to recreate that makeup. I also tried to recreate the bookshelves and stuff, but my lighting is nowhere near the same that it used to be. I don't even film with the same kind of camera anymore. My hair doesn't even look the same, but I did try to recreate the makeup look at the very least. If you've been watching my videos for a while, then you probably know that I actually am a really big horror reader, and all of those hot pink blocks are horror. Horror and fantasy are generally my top books every year. I just love horror, and I am almost constantly reading a horror book or a thriller book, one or the other. With that being said, this is a horror recommendation video, which means that I do think you should look up any trigger warnings for any of the books. I will not be providing those trigger warnings in this video, but you can definitely find them on Goodreads, etc. Because it is a horror recommendation video, you should assume there are triggers. So that is my heads up to that. I also am going to be talking about two thrillers first that I do think could fall into the horror category. So I'm going to start with those and get them out of the way, and then we'll dig into the standard horror. First up, we have my favorite and my comfort read, They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This book is a thriller about a professor at a college who is also a serial killer. Think like Dexter, kind of. She goes after men who deserve it, who assault women, and there is the secondary perspective of a student at the same college, I think it's the same college, who is experiencing college for the first time and experiencing queerness, really awakening for the first time, and she also has terrible men in her life, so it's really interesting to see how their paths meet in life. And then the twist in this was still very shocking to me. It's one that I will always remember and always enjoy. I am not going to get into any further details than this, except that I support women's wrongs. Next, we have The Husbands by Chandler Baker. This is a gender-bent Stepford wife thriller. I really enjoyed the Stepford Wives book. I enjoy books that are based around that concept. I enjoyed the movie. Both of them, actually. I really liked that concept, and so to see it gender bent is fantastic. It's absolutely one of my favorite thrillers because of that specifically. I think that we currently live in an era where men are trying to do better, but because they don't understand invisible labor, they're still not doing better, and also that we are having to give them the credit of at least you don't abuse me, that kind of thing, at least you're in our kids' lives, the bare minimum, and so you're not allowed to be upset at them for not taking on the invisible labor. I'm really lucky that the friends that I have don't personally experience this, but I have seen it. And I think that this book does a really good job of addressing that in a thriller aspect as well as in the Stepford wife feel. Stepford husbands, if you will. Yeah, ending everything. It's a wild ride, so highly recommend. Moving on to my next section. This section of horror books is heavily inspired by Landis, in that Landis should never read these books. In that if you want to read a book that has answers to your questions, that resolves things, most of the things in the end, that makes sense at the end, then don't read these. Just skip them. These books are very much vibes, one of which is very much body horror vibes, and the other one is haha, what the fuck is happening here? The first one is that haha, what the fuck is happening here, and it's Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This book is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's scary because you don't know what's going on, and that's a bit stressful. I really liked this book because it talks about grieving someone who's still alive, and as someone who kind of had to go through that process recently, this book made me really emotional, which is odd to say about a horror. A bit speculative horror, speculative fiction maybe would be a good way to describe this. I'm not super sure, but I really enjoyed this book. I've read it a couple of times now, and every time I discover new things about it that I enjoy, so there's that. And next we have Eric LaRocca's Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. and Other Misfortunes. This is more specifically Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. However, I did enjoy the other books in this set. I think there's 3, and one of them is like very religious trauma-y, which love that. The thing about Eric LaRocco's books is that you don't always get answers to your questions, but some of the stories you do. So that's tricky, but I love body horror, and Eric does a fantastic job of writing it. This book has the quote that I now reference kind of frequently, which annoys everyone, but is, "What have you done today to deserve your eyes?" This is the book that does that to me, that makes me ask people that question and make them very uncomfortable. I just really enjoy this book. I really enjoy all of Eric's books, actually, so I think that this is just like a, hey, read this one's my favorite of Eric's books, but also you should read all of Eric's books. So that's how I feel about this one. It truly is a fantastic horror book. Now on to just general horror that I really enjoyed. I don't own all of these physically. Most of them I have as audiobooks, actually, but this is just the general horror that I have enjoyed. First up, we have The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This is like in a dystopian sort of sci-fi world, and our main character is cave diving to find stuff. Don't ask me what she's trying to go find to find stuff. This book is claustrophobic. It's very scary. If you don't like the dark and you don't like enclosed spaces and you don't like feeling trapped, this book has all of those things. And then it also has a monster that you can't quite see, but you know is there because it's big enough that you know it's there. Haha. This book is so fucking stressful. This book is incredibly stressful, very high stakes, one of my favorite horror books of all time. I love Caitlin's horror as a whole. I do have 2 of her books in this set today, but this is definitely one of my favorites, and I just loved it a lot. Next up, we have Final Girls by Mera Grant. This is another sci-fi horror in which there is, and it's a short book, in which there is a company that is doing kind of like virtual reality, where like virtual reality is a form of therapy to kind of rebuild bonds or help people address fears that they have, except it puts them in the setting of your classic slasher film because they've found somehow that makes people feel better. But the trick of it is that it actually straight up can manipulate your brain and your thoughts and feelings about certain things. There's a reporter who is going there mostly to point out that that is a problem, that having technology that specifically can allow someone to manipulate how you feel about something is not, especially like in a way that's completely outside of your control and at such a quick rate, that's a bit of a problem, and she agrees to go under. And you know, there are points where you're like, how much of this was planned? What is going wrong? And it's a bit stressful, but I loved it. Mera Grant is Shannon McGuire's pen name, specifically for horror, I think, and I really enjoy Mera Grant's writing as a whole, because I love Shannon as a whole, so that just makes sense. But Final Girls, short little book, fun plot, very interesting story. Not a lot of like twists necessarily, but it's still a good one. Next we have How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This book, y'all, this book had me so stressed out. This is one of those horror books that you are 75% in and everyone is celebrating that they're done. Everyone's like, we beat the bad guy, we're done, yay! And it's 75% in, which means what? No. You're acting like the book's done and there's 25% more left. What do you mean? This book is about a woman whose mother passes away and she needs to sell her house. But it is haunted by the spirit of a Bible puppet. And if you were raised in any kind of evangelical church or some mega churches did this as well, where they would have puppeteers come to teach children in the children's church. It's like, that's what I was picturing. That's what I was picturing. Maybe editing me will like include a photo of like the kind of puppets that I'm thinking of, but that's what I was picturing, and that makes this whole thing worse. It just makes it worse. Yeah, the puppet is evil and will bite your leg off, basically. It's like a little feral puppet with teeth or weapons. Like, I don't think I need to say more than that, honestly. Haunted house, religious memorabilia. Mom also just like made puppets. So like the house has a room that's just fucking full of puppets, which is also terrible. I think only one of them is alive though. Doesn't matter. Children ghosts. Ghosts of children. Also horrible. Children are horrible. I mean, like, I love them, but they're horrible, right? In the context of a horror setting, horrible. You introduce a child, even a dead child, into a horror book, and I'm stressed. So, like, that's how this book went. I like Grady. I'm just gonna keep saying this basically about every horror author that I'm talking about, where I'm like, I love all of their horror though, but Grady Hendrix is another one. I think that for me with Grady Hendrix, it's that they have 80s slasher film vibes. Like, all of them have 80s slasher film vibes. And I don't know how you encapsulate that into a book, but Grady Hendrix does it, and it is incredible, and I love it. Next we have Nos Fatu by Joe Hill. This book is does have a TV series, which I started but didn't finish, but it was not following the book as well as I would have liked, which is why I didn't finish it. But Nos Fatu is so interesting. It has a character who is driving a old vehicle, and the name of that old type of vehicle is like really important, and I cannot for the life of me think of it right now. But he's driving this old vehicle and he kidnaps children, and he's like a vibes vampire, like a youthful, innocent energy vampire is the best way I can describe it. And there are quite a few different characters in this book who have these like odd powers where our main character, she's able to ride a bike onto this like bridge that can kind of take her anywhere that she wants if she's looking for something. There is a character who has Scrabble cards that, or Scrabble, what are they? The tiles, Scrabble tiles that will answer her questions, that kind of thing. And it's horror, but there's a lot of fantasy aspects to it, and it is a really big book because it is really well thought out, I feel like. It covers backstory that you didn't know you needed. You get a lot of history of why some of these characters are like this. So like if you're someone who hardcore needs answers to your questions, I actually think Joe Hill's books as a whole do a pretty good job of that. But Nos Fatu especially, and it's a good book. Next we have Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. This book is fucking stressful. So imagine with me that you are a scientist who's like doing science-y things. I didn't understand that part. Doing science-y things underground, and you have a basement. And suddenly in your basement at your house, a door appears. I would move, personally, but you're a scientist, so you don't move. Instead, you open that door. Or no, you can't open that door. The door won't open. Also, your basement keeps getting bigger or like lower into the ground. Like it keeps changing, which basements aren't supposed to do that. And then one day there is someone, your doppelganger, is in the basement. She's in the basement. She came through the door that you can't open that didn't used to be there. So yeah, that's the plot of Last to Leave the Room, and I think that you don't need more information than that, but it's one of the most stressful books I've ever read. I enjoyed it a lot, and Caitlin actually had this sent to me, so that I could give it to my husband when he's home. I think he'll enjoy this a lot. Next, we have one that I actually read a bit recently, which is Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. This book is, I don't know if you guys are into any like alternate reality games, ARGs, where like a YouTube will come up or a website will come up and it's like talking about a TV show or something that everyone remembers but there's no record of. Welcome Home is the one that comes to mind specifically to me. This is like that. It is about a TV show called Mr. Magic that everyone knows happened and they used to watch it, but they couldn't tell you what channel it was on. Anytime they post about it without like an acronym, it gets taken down. It's really hard to find that. And we're reading this from the perspective of one of the child actors that was on Mr. Magic. And she has like no memory prior to when she left Mr. Magic. She does not remember being on the show. She does not remember any of those things. And there is going to be a Mr. Magic reunion all of a sudden, and she's invited to go onto this podcast and interact with her former castmates, etc. And she's starting to get her memories back. horrible things have happened. And this book is so subtle with the way that it has religious trauma in it that until I read the author's note, I had no guarantee that it was based out of religious trauma, which I think is a really great way to do that, because I think that people who've like experienced religious trauma or interact with people who have religious trauma, I think that a book like this does a really good job of, like, we can catch that. We're like, oh shit, this is kind of religious trauma-y. But for people who just like horror and don't have that trauma, it's still a scary and jarring book because the concepts are still scary and jarring. So I think that Kirsten White did a really fantastic job of it. I enjoyed that a lot. And last but not least, and I've talked about this book a lot, and it used to be my basis for people's threshold for body horror. Now, things have gotten worse since we last spoke, is my threshold for people's ability to handle body horror. But it used to be Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. I'm sorry. It's incredible. She did an incredible job. And I'm so glad that this got translated and that I have had it in my life. I honestly was surprised to discover that I don't own a physical copy of this book. Shocking, truly. But anyway, Tender as the Flesh is about if all of the meat in the world, or all of the animals in the world, died. If they all died tomorrow, or were non-consumable, and they start farming humans. That's all you need to know about that book. They have leather and milk and hunting expeditions for the rich. That's all you need to know. Haha. So yeah, those are my horror recommendations for you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want more recommendation videos for me, comment down below. I would love to know if there's like a theme or something that you guys want me to follow and you would love my recommendations or something. And if you've read some of these books, shout about them. I'd love to hear about it. If you're gonna read some of these books, ask me. I would love to talk about it with you. If you didn't enjoy this video, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Let me know how I can make it better for you in the comments. But yeah, I post videos every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, excluding the first week of the month. And that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Take your meds, drink your water, and do something today to take care of yourselves. Okay, thanks, bye.